to the next episode of Navigating the Maritime Ecosystems with me, Punit Oza, under the Capital Links podcast series. I'm actually always awed by the kind of insights that I get from most of the guests on my podcast. But today, I think it's very special for me because not only am I getting the two of the best speakers on the Singapore maritime ecosystem, I also feel that I'm a direct beneficiary from this ecosystem. I've been a part of this ecosystem and fortunate to have been part of this ecosystem for more than 18 years, but I've seen the growth of Singapore since I've been in the industry for more than 30 years. So it's a pleasure to introduce Beng Tan from Singapore Maritime Foundation. She's the executive director. Her previous stints have been with the Maritime and Port Authority. I think she's, if I can use that word, authority on what the Maritime Singapore ecosystem is all about. I have interacted with her since the time I have come to Singapore, and it's been a pleasure to have her support and guidance. But most importantly, it's a pleasure to have her on the podcast. Welcome, Bengti, for the podcast.
Thank you.
And then I've got Caroline Yang. She's the chairperson of Singapore Shipping Association. I have again known Caroline for quite a few years. But the very interesting part about Caroline is that she's also a practitioner. She's running her own shipping company. And that means that while you're looking at this kind of a broader perspective of Singapore Shipping Association, at the same time, she's also able to see the micro level execution aspects of these policies that she sees take shape in the Maritime Singapore ecosystem. So welcome, Caroline. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Great. So we are basically going to delve deep into a conversation about the Maritime Singapore's ecosystem. Now, Singapore's ecosystem and maritime ecosystem story is nothing short of spectacular. I have always seen that maritime ecosystems have either been very, cleverly and specifically curated in some cases. Some cases they've come up because of the customs of the trade and how business has developed. And sometimes they're basically just economic factors and other factors that circumstantially bring our own ecosystem. I would say Singapore's ecosystem is one of the most planned and well-executed ecosystem. I belong to it myself, so I can vouch for it. Maybe I start with Bengti and just get a perspective on how she thinks and she sees, having seen the transformation over the years from both sides of the fence, literally, how does she see the key transformation elements taking shape when Singapore was nothing but a port to what Singapore is today? How has that process been, Bengti? If you can just share a broad overview on that key transformation elements. Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks, Punit. So as you said, Singapore's growth as an international maritime center started with our port. Back then, we focused a lot on the port infrastructure. And at the same time, we also have the Singapore Registry of Ships to promote the Singapore flag. In fact, the port has served us well, and it has continued to do well. So if I may share, last year, we did very well in terms of container throughput. We crossed the 40 million TEUs for the first time in history. And to be exact, we did about 42 million TEUs. At the same time, our ship registry also did well. We crossed the 100 million GT, and we closed the year with about 108 million GT. So when I start reflecting on this, I feel that the one defining moment that put us on track to grow Singapore into an international maritime center is a decision that we took in 2003 when we wanted to grow Singapore beyond a hub port into a global maritime center. And that actually involves a deliberate measure by the government to move functions across statutory boards. Because in the past, shipping was under two ministries, Ministry of Trade, for which you had the old Trade Development Board and now ESG. And then you have the Marine Department and now MPA under the Ministry of Transport. So a decision was taken to move commercial aspects of shipping, which was under the Ministry of Trade, to the Ministry of Transport. And that to me was a defining moment because it was a very deliberate and concerted measure. And we then have a one-stop center to handle shipping. Yeah. So that is the start of the building of the whole maritime ecosystem. And there's no turning back. So it's just to make sure that the maritime ecosystem will continue to thrive. And over the years, since we make the decision, we just make sure that we put the facets in place and to make sure that there is as comprehensive a maritime ecosystem as we can in Singapore.
That's very interesting. And very interesting for me also to understand the fact that when you start building a deliberate process of creating that ecosystem, you also needed to take a very holistic approach. 2003 is, it sounds like a decent amount of time, but in reality, if you look at the development story of an ecosystem, 22 years is not a long time. And the achievements have simply been phenomenal. So when I look at this holistic approach, you basically said that you really got the authority to start taking very strategic decisions from the Ministry of Trade to the Ministry of Transport. Sounds like a very bureaucratic way to look at it, but it's actually a game changer, as you rightly said. How do you go about assembling literally a coalition of the government and regulators mindset change, first of all? Secondly, how do you actually start building this holistic ecosystem of shipping companies? I know some of the big names have shifted and are still shifting their global headquarters into Singapore. Support services follow, education institutions, which you are very closely working with. Both of you are, in fact, very closely working with professional bodies, which Caroline is extremely closely involved with, and even dispute resolution. So you are actually having a very broad based ecosystem, holistic aspects there. How do you go about planning that? Because there's so many jigsaw puzzle pieces. How do you manage to put them together? That would be fascinating. Yeah.
You know, actually, I'm proud to say that in Singapore, we come together to discuss issues. So I think there was one meeting where both the officials from the Ministry of Transport as well as the, that means it started at MPA level, you know,
Yes.
as well as the IE Singapore level at that time to say that what must we do, you know, to ensure that Singapore continue to thrive as a maritime hub. And that's why we say that why don't we actually put together our resources and create a one-stop shop so that we are able to approach issues that shipping companies have holistically, and then we would have enough resources to pursue what we want. So that is the kind of environment that we have in Singapore. And in a way, we are very blessed to have government officials speaking to each other to ensure that it actually benefits the nation. Yeah. So when we then look at the maritime ecosystem, we ask ourselves, what are we? Basically, shipping is a global industry, and we are a global service center.
Right.
And so the question then is, what is the driving force behind an ecosystem approach? And the driving force behind an ecosystem approach must be to understand the market, to create the environment that the market needs. And with that in mind, we started with looking at the shipping companies, the ship owners and operators, to see what are some of these requirements that they need. And then we systematically then look at some of these facets to bring into shipping, into Singapore, including shipbroking, ship management, etc. Some of them, we do not do it sequentially. In fact, it is actually concurrent approach. And then some will actually take time to come in, whereas some, it happens like that. And we are really pleased, you know, that some of the segments actually come in a very good way. But having said that, there are also areas that we feel that we could continuously continue to improve. And because of the way shipping has been evolving and there's transformation going on within the industry, it also means that we would also have to look at new players to bring into the industry. So one of which would be the technology players.
Absolutely. I'll come back to that in a minute, because I know that in the budget announcements this year, Singapore has actually talked about entry players in AIS scheme, which is a new player scheme, which is quite an interesting one. But Caroline, let me come to you. When I look at the other maritime ecosystems, and especially the one that has been, the front runner for many, many years was London. The entire ecosystem kind of grew out of trade. Trade was kind of the main focus of the business. Of course, the colonial aspects were involved in that point of time, but they actually naturally gave rise to institutions, professional bodies, and they grew the entire ecosystem in a very organic fashion. Singapore Shipping Association ticks that box of professional body and really kind of enriches that environment that Singapore provides, not just in terms of awareness of the latest issues, what your members need to know, what's going on in the industry, what's going on in other parts of the world with regard to regulations, other things, but also alternatives. I recently, I'm a big geopolitics buff. I teach it. I know recently there was an event that you guys had on the Trump and trade part of. That's a very fascinating discussion because people need to know what might happen, what may happen, and then start using strategic ideas to work with it. So you create a very important part and a pillar of this ecosystem. How do you go about envisaging keeping yourself relevant and expanding this role that SSA has? Maybe you want to talk about that. Yeah.
So again, if I were to reflect on SSA's role, we are very clear in the two pillars that we have to do. One is to the promotion of Singapore as an international maritime center. And actually, I'm very glad to have heard from Beng how it all started. And it shows an intention. So in everything that we do, it must be very intentional. So for SSA, it's also very intentional. Of course, we have evolved over the past 40 years. We are celebrating our 40th anniversary. But we have two pillars. One is the promotion of Singapore as an international maritime center. And we are clear that if Singapore is successful as an IMC, the companies will be attracted here, jobs will be available, it will be secured, there will be a vibrant ecosystem here. And of course, in this area, we need that tripartism, and that is that the regulators who attract the companies with the tax regimes, with the clarity of rules, and with making Singapore an attractive place to live in. And then my second pillar is the advocacy of our members, the voice of the majority. And we must always articulate that majority voice. And we also see ourselves as a body that gives very honest and constructive feedback to the government. And sometimes we call it the reality check to the government, to the regulators, so that the industry's point of view is always taken into consideration. Because the ultimate goal is the success of Maritime Singapore. And all our actions in how we engage our members and all stakeholders are guided by these two principles.
That's a very interesting take. And I think it's a very interesting space from the idea that there is a reality check mechanism like this in place. It's not easy for centers which are looking at trying to basically be vibrant to exist and grow without the reality checks in place. And I think that's a very valid point. But if I come back to you again, Caroline, and ask you saying, if you have to tell your members who want to come into Singapore now and they want to become SSA members, what would be the kind of key areas that you think Maritime Singapore will be able to contribute to their growth, to their progress, to their profits, to their well-being? How do you as a professional body sell Maritime Singapore or portray Maritime Singapore to your members in terms of value proposition? How would that look like?
Yeah, so actually my first sell is always, I tell the new members, this is an amazing community. We are quite fragmented as an industry, but because Singapore is so small and so dense, we are so close together, we are also very closely knitted. So I tell all my new members, be a meaningful part of the ecosystem. Participate actively in the committees. We have 9 operational committees that looks at every single issue that you can think of in the Maritime Singapore. So how do we do that? Even if you want to articulate you must have that informed basis to articulate. You must
Right.
have that information. And that's how we want to create awareness. We give educational talks, we do conferences, we try to bring in all the experts from different areas to educate our members. And we tell them to participate in our committees, join our committees, and be that voice. And so you be informed, and then you are also working in the companies. You actually experience those issues. You bring those issues into the committees. We can hear the majority voice, and then we will then speak to the stakeholders on the issues that concern our members. But most important thing is actually network. Go
Right.
out and meet the community. You build bonds and you build a community. And I can't think of a better platform than SSA. And I always tell my new members as well, be courageous. Be
Right.
courageous with your views, but be constructive. And just with only one agenda, give back. You want to better maritime Singapore. Singapore does well, you will do well.
Absolutely. And that's so true that because you're a part of the ecosystem, if the ecosystem does well, you do well as well. That's a very valid point. And I must share, when I was in Klaveness in Singapore, I used to joke to most of my Norwegian friends and colleagues used to come saying that in this place, you can walk down on a Friday afternoon on Boat Quay, and by the time you finish that walk down the Boat Quay, you would have met your customers, you would have met your brokers, most likely you met your agents, and
True.
obviously you had a lot of
Yes,
alcohol to drink as well. So it's very interesting
that's
that you
right.
might have finished a few deals before you finished a few beers. Very
Yeah.
unusual to
That's
actually
right.
have an environment like that. And
That's
one,
Actually,
yeah,
yeah,
please, Benthi, go ahead.
put it indeed it is so because I think as Caroline has put it, one of the important point to note is that there is a marketplace in Singapore. It is a place that you can meet, your customers. You can actually meet your suppliers, and you also meet your managers and your brokers. So it is all in one place.
Absolutely. But at the same time, I just wanted to take a leaf from that last discussion or last point that you made, Bengti. How do you see the ability for Singapore to be able to have trade and shipping so close to each other? Do you see the potential, or rather the benefit, shipping benefit from the trade aspects and the learnings from trade? Because there are so many solutions which are not just shipping centric, but they are trade centric as well. Even the education institution, when it comes
Mm.
to SMU, for example, they have the MBOT, they also have the ITT, the trading track and the shipping track in the same course, so as to speak.
Yes.
So how has this interaction of trade and shipping kind of been beneficial for Singapore, especially because most of the other ecosystems are majority is maritime centric ecosystems.
Mm.
Even the European trading houses are mostly sitting now in Geneva rather than in London. So shipping is so closely tied with trade. How do you see that synergy working out for Singapore? Yeah.
Um, to us, it is very important. So, Punit, as you said, the shipping companies actually must serve its clients, and depending on what particular sector you are in. So, if you are in your dry as well as the wet trades, then you would actually want to have much more traders. To be close by. So what we always say about proximity to the
Yes.
market. Yeah. And if you are a liner company, then you want to look at the manufacturing hubs and where are the end markets for which Singapore will serve as a transshipment hub. So to us, attracting global traders to be based in Singapore is important because trade and shipping goes hand in hand. Yeah, they are interdependent, and if you are able to put the two together effectively, you are actually creating a marketplace for both.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And then I actually feel that the support services have by default decided to come to Singapore because all their principals are here already. So it kind of creates an environment. And I saw that initially in, you mentioned 2003. I remember coming for opening party of SSY very early and
Mm.
met you for the first time. And I asked a couple of SSY brokers saying that you guys are all basically in Australia. What is the reason for you're shifting such a big team here? He says all our principals are here now. Rio Tinto is here, BHP is here, and the others are moving. So this is where they saw the line writing on the wall, literally. as they moved around. So that's very interesting. Caroline, let me come back to you and I also ask you one specific thing with regard to, in fact, this is the question that will be also relevant to Bengti later on, is that Singapore is obviously having a really good run, 11 years or more in the top position. But it's also a very positive influence when it comes to maritime supply chain logistics for the entire region, the whole of Asia. And we are able to not just create, I would say, benchmarks, but also learning experiences for all our companies in other parts of Asia. And there is a lot of synergies that can be explored. How is Singapore Shipping Association kind of trying to help the bigger picture in Asia, especially? Through Asian Ship Owners Forum and others. How does that kind of collaboration work out for Singapore and for Asia as a whole, basically?
Okay, to simply put it, I think SSA is a member of the ASEAN Ship Owners Association. It's called Federation of ASEAN Ship Owners Association. So FASA, there are about seven members in this association. And then via FASA is actually a member of the Asian Ship Owners Association. So you have FASA, which is about seven members, and then there are about another 5 or 6 Asian members, China, Hong Kong, for the life of me, Korea, Japan. So there is this community, and we do meet from time to time, and we do discuss issues, and so there are platforms to collaborate. And I believe that SSA definitely, we are very, I would say we are very eager, and we are confident that SSA can be a very strong contributing member in any collaborations or initiatives that that Asia wants to do. So in that part, there are the platforms. What I would like to say is that, the first time I went to an IMO plenary session, and I was very taken aback when in the Europe, when one country puts up a proposal and puts up its card, you have 26 countries following suit. And that is solidarity. And that is coming together for a policy that they somehow have managed to thrash it out and agree upon. And Asia has 50% of the tonnage in this world. And that's not what I'm seeing in Asia right now. So I believe that there are ways that we can come together, especially with regulatory changes. And within ASEAN on decarbonization, I think there are many areas we can work together. And then, of course, on the wider Asian perspective, we definitely compete with each other, but there are common denominations that we can come together. I really, truly believe in that.
And that's very true. And that is why the question was, because I believe when you have an ecosystem that is dynamic and vibrant like this, you tend to kind of attract the others to come and follow or at least collaborate with you as much as possible. And I think that for me is a great blueprint in terms of the ambitions that you can have of utilizing the ecosystem for the better good, for the greater good, as you call it. So it's just a matter of time. I think that will happen, Caroline. I hope that happens as well. But let me take Bengti on the same question with regard to the fact that over the last 5 years, I would say, maybe 3, 4 years actively, but probably it's in the pipeline for the last 5 years, Bengti, that I've seen Singapore taking a leading role on trying to create collaborative ecosystem partners. So we are not just talking about a company collaborating with another company in another part of the world. We're talking about, Port of Singapore, looking at green corridors, looking at technology, innovation, collaboration, looking at various platforms to set up, generally trying to create a broader global ecosystem collaborative setups. Is that something that is the future? You think that the ecosystem to ecosystem collaboration will be actually the best recipe for a global ecosystem at some point of time for maritime? Or do you think that this is just a need transactional need by need basis, or do you think there's something bigger in this eventually? Yeah?
So my take is that again, when we look at shipping, it is a global business. A global business means there's cross-border transactions, right? And then second thing that we are looking at is what are the issues facing the maritime community today. And it is about digitalization and it's about decarbonization. And these are issues that are not within just the domestic market. It is actually cross-border, and it actually requires the collaborations of port authorities around the world, or even partners, to actually look at some of these issues. So I would say that looking ahead, ecosystem collaborations will be important.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, Punit, if I can just jump in on this.
Absolutely.
Global trade
Yes.
depends on global shipping. We
Yes.
move 90% of the goods in this world. If there is no shipping, there will be no global trade. We bring prosperity we uplift communities who are in poverty. And it was through shipping that we could actually better the lives of many communities in the world. So we must remember that global shipping is very important to the world, to the lives, to the trade, to everything that we do. And in today, because shipping is global, is international in nature, and we need to have we need to have a very clear set of regulations, one global set of regulations that applies to the whole shipping community. But because of the geopolitics that we are having, and the issues that we are facing in decarbonization, for example, for the measures that we need to take, also for the least developed countries and also the small island developing countries, we all need to come together with global regulations, because only with that certainty, then we can move shipping, and then shipping can all come together, and it will bring benefits to the communities, because in terms of lower prices, in terms of efficiencies. But now, because we have all these geopolitics, I think it is more important now. We need to find that coalition of willing, the countries that believe in the global free trade principles and system, all to come together. Is very idealistic, but we need to come together. And we have an IMO, and we need to come together and have one clear set of regulations that applies to the whole shipping community.
I agree. And I think that's well put, because in my mind, most of the time, shipping doesn't get its due. I remember during the COVID period, what SSA, MPA, and all the other bodies did for the seafarers was, nothing short of a miracle, if you ask me, that you guys pulled it off. But it was something which was just a drop in the ocean. They deserve so much more. They were the only people working in that toughest of the environments. Taking nothing away from the medical and the other workers. The seafarers did the exact same job of putting food on the people's table. And we never really got that kind of credit that we deserve. So I think there's so much that shipping needs, and shipping needs it to make it easier for everybody. And here I think the COVID was a great wake-up call in terms of how we saw the value of shipping across the globe. But also, Bengti, that brings me to the other question about what Singapore Maritime Foundation is. And I've been fortunate to be involved with SMF at multiple levels, including the board. And I really, really thank you for that opportunity. But most importantly for me, it's a defining way of a kind of a format of public-private partnership, which I have not seen happen in other countries, at least not in the same level of detail as I've seen with Singapore Maritime Foundation. So what was the thinking behind putting a public-private partnership like this? Because you have SSA being represented as well, you got the MPA being represented, you got the various companies, and they're all sitting on the board, they're having an advisory council as well. How does this entire SMF concept function? How did it start? And what is the kind of future you think for SMF going forward?
Yeah. So, Punit, a public private sector kind of initiative or partnership is actually very important, because basically it builds trust. It builds trust and it attributes collaboration. It encourages private sector to come on board to take ownership. And also because for the public sector, we can actually do policy issues, but we may not have deep insights into the industry. And if we are able to come together, we would then create an environment that is actually for the mutual benefit of all, for both Singapore as well as for the players in the market. SMF is a non-member organization, so we do not have members, whereas
Right.
SSA has member organization. And SMF's role is to complement MPA's efforts in building a cohesive maritime ecosystem in Singapore. And one of the area that we wanted to actually drive and look at very thoroughly is about manpower. Yeah.
Sure.
Because earlier we spoke about trends that are affecting the industry, be it geopolitics or be it decarbonization or digitalization. The cascading implication means that your workforce must be equipped to handle such things that will to come. So in SMF, we look at this whole pipeline of workforce, and we break it up into two areas. One we call the pre-employment education. So that means those who have not entered the workforce, which is your students, because one of the concerns of the industry is that we do not have new blood coming into the industry. And if you've got no new blood coming to the industry, then you must actually do much more deliberate actions. How do you actually create that affinity for the young with maritime? So that is actually one whole area of work that we do, which also includes things like scholarship, learning journeys, internship, is actually to bring to life to the students what maritime is about, and to unveil that maritime is a whole big ecosystem and not what they see, for example, the port and the ships. Yeah, so that is one group that we are doing very actively. And again, we can only succeed provided the private sector comes on board, by offering scholarships, internship, or coming to the campuses to give talks, or we bringing the students to the companies to look at the environment that potentially they are going to work in. The other area that we feel is very important because of the change and transformation in the sector is about continuous education and training. Yeah. And because ships are getting smarter, it means that certain skill sets will be required. Unfortunately, for some of the people who are in the system, they do not have such skill sets, which then means that we would have to equip them with the skill sets. Otherwise, there'll be redundancy within the industry. And hence, we are working with the Institute of Higher Learning with NUS to actually look at coming up with a data science and analytics course to actually move and upskill some of the professionals in the industry who may not have enough skill, who may not have the skill set. So the bottom line to us when we look at all these policies and programs is, what do we need to do in order to make Singapore relevant to shipping? And these are the things that we feel will be important.
Absolutely. And that's well put, because according to me, the relevance part is about adding value. Every time, and I can talk from my experience in Clavenes, when we set up the office in Singapore, it was basically the discussion was, where is the location that adds most value for us and our customers? The minute that value add comes in, then the rest of the discussions are all about cost benefit analysis. But the fundamental idea of setting up in Singapore is already sealed. After that, you decide which are the building blocks you can put up. It depends on whether you want to build a 20-floor building or a 50-floor building. But the foundation is laid, and you have got a structure which will come up. So it's very, very interesting that you share that. Obviously, it's been, we're running out of time, but it's been phenomenal to talk to you. And Caroline, especially thank to you. You're outside, out in the out in the airport talking about this. Thank you so much for doing this. One last request from my side is just one area which you think, especially in 2025, right now, from an ecosystem perspective, what is the number one area that you think you will be focusing on in the SMF and the SSA for 2025 for the Maritime Singapore ecosystem? What is that one area that you think is of urgency and will be given priority for you, both the SMF and SSA? Beng, maybe you want to just pick out one topic.
Workforce competitiveness.
Perfect. All right. What about you, Caroline?
geopolitics, very
Great.
much so. How it affects
Absolutely, my
shipping.
ears.
Yes.
Absolutely. No, great. Thank you
Yeah.
so very much. This has been absolutely phenomenal. And this is the first in the series that we have actually talked about from a government regulatory perspective, professional bodies perspective. There are going to be two more episodes on Singapore, one from a company commercial perspective, and secondly from a services perspective, where I will try and showcase even the broader services that are being offered in the maritime Singapore ecosystem, including dispute resolution, which has been very close to my heart as well. So hopefully you will hear more from me in future. But thank you so much for your time and look forward to see you soon in Singapore Maritime Week. Thank you.
Thank you, Punit.